Today on the table I have the Charter Arms Undercover, chambered in .38 Special, and the Smith & Wesson 637. Now before we get into this review, Vortec is sponsoring a giveaway. They got you covered whether it's summer or winter. You get 2 hats, one of these cool little bags. Just like before, I am going to be running this giveaway on Patreon, but you do not need to be a Patreon paying member in order to enter. Just as a viewer, you can go over there and enter. You'd have to set up an account, which is about the same as setting up a YouTube account, but it will not cost you a penny. And if you're curious why I'm doing this on Patreon, I explain in detail. Just click on this little card right here. But into the comparison. So the Smith & Wesson is a lighter firearm. Not by a whole lot, but it's noticeable. Even just picking it up in your hand, you'll notice the difference in feel. Overall length, the Smith & Wesson is a shorter firearm. Height, it's also shorter. Width, they're pretty similar. I'll spec it out and give you the difference. Now the Charter Arms does have a slightly longer barrel. The overall feel of the firearm, usually when I want a firearm, I want it so I have pinky purchase. This one doesn't, but it still feels okay. Your Charter Arms, you do get pinky purchase. So if you're big on that, the Smith probably isn't going to work for you. At least not that model. Now, which one feels better in my hand? The Smith & Wesson feels better in my hand. Just the grip of the Charter Arms doesn't feel that great. The grip quality too, like the Charter Arms, you can pull it apart and stuff. When you shoot it, this is probably going to separate, because when I push on it, it pushes it apart. And pinch your hand. That is something you're going to want to be aware of. Now if you're like, well, why would I want a pink grip? Smith & Wesson has you covered. It even comes with a black grip. All you have to do is switch it out. It also comes with a very high quality hard case and a trigger lock. You get your owner's manual. I believe you get a sticker too. Let me take a look. I'm not seeing a sticker. But then you also get your lockdown keys. The lockdown device, I am a huge not a fan of. I don't know what word I was going to use in there. But they have a tendency to malfunction. Most of you probably will never have a problem. If I had a firearm with a lockdown key, I would either stake this so it absolutely cannot work itself into the lock position from recoil, or maybe drip some, basically render it useless. Maybe drip some Loctite in there, something. I haven't personally had the problem on a Smith & Wesson, but I've seen it repeatedly on Tauruses. So that is something to be aware of. Lucky Gunner also reported on this problem.
Smith & Wesson internal lock. This is a safety feature they started adding to the revolvers in the early 2000s. It is almost universally hated. The locks have been known to occasionally engage all by themselves under the force of recoil, which means the gun is completely locked up until the user can find their key and unlock it.
Charter Arms does not have the lockdown key, so that's pretty cool. Actual using the firearm from your normal shooting position, pulling the trigger, I don't really have an issue with my trigger finger or my thumb getting in the way of my trigger finger. Using the cylinder release, I do have an issue with. Because of where it's located, it always puts my thumb right in the way of the cylinder, so it swipes my thumb and always leaves little dirty grease marks. I'm assuming if you were to push it open, load it or whatever, and for whatever reason you were to put it there and shut it, you could pinch your skin, possibly break it. Smith & Wesson, normal shooting position. Again, I'm having interference with my thumb and trigger finger, but it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Just like on the Charter Arms. And the cylinder release, it moves your thumb back. So it clears without a problem. Both these, I suspect, are going to have issues with speed loaders because of how close the cylinder is to the frame. But it will be doable. You're just going to struggle a little bit. I think the Charter Arms would probably actually be easier. Because the Smith & Wesson, the grip is pretty fat. So with your full-length rounds in there, I think you're going to have clearance issues. The Charter Arms does not seem to have that problem because the grip is pretty much flush with the outside of the cylinder, but it still is going to be tough. Something you're going to want to be aware of. Trigger brake. Double action mode. Charter Arms is about what you'd expect out of a double action revolver. Single action mode. A little bit of creep, but it breaks incredibly well. There's your creep, and then your snap. The Smith & Wesson. Double action mode, it breaks better than the Charter Arms. The trigger kind of reminds me of a compound bow. As you're pulling it, it's very heavy. And then you get almost like a let off right here. Single action. To try to describe how awesome the single action is on this would be doing a disservice. It's really that good. If I were to buy this firearm, I would actually have to train with it a lot to get used to how good it is just because of how crappy other triggers normally are. By no means am I saying the Charter Arms is bad, but this is in an entirely different class. Here's your brake. Starting to apply weight now. Absolutely zero creep. Very clean snap. It's light, but it's not overly light, if that makes any sense. The Smith & Wesson uses aluminum frame, but a stainless steel barrel, stainless steel cylinder, trigger steel, hammer steel. Charter Arms uses a stainless steel frame, stainless steel barrel, hammer, and cylinder. So if you're not a fan of aluminum parts on your firearm, the Smith is not going to be the choice for you. Do I think it'll have a problem? Probably not. Now when you purchase the Charter Arms, you also get a pretty decent case. It's really nice. Owner's manual. I'm not seeing a sticker from Charter Arms in there either. But your trigger lock's different. This actually goes over it. Now there's something to be said that, oh, I could load this and then put this trigger lock on there, so all I have to do is take off the trigger lock, but these are extremely slow, so I don't really see an advantage there. I prefer the Smith & Wesson trigger lock a lot more. Now the Smith & Wesson, it says right on the barrel, rated for plus P38. Charter Arms, when you go on their website, it kind of gives you the runaround. They're like, they don't actually... You know what? I'll just post a little caption of what it says. But I'm going to summarize. But basically, I was getting the vibe that we don't really want you to shoot plus P ammunition in our firearm. Not to mention there's no real advantage because the barrel is too short. But you can. This says right there, plus P. So I would definitely feel much more comfortable shooting plus P ammunition out of this. Now, there is a $100 price split. The Charter Arms is about $100 cheaper than the Smith. So is that $100 worth the Smith? I mean, it's not really that much lighter. It's light enough to where you notice a difference, but it isn't something significant like a ½ pound or something like that. Well, looking at the two firearms, the Smith & Wesson, this is the first Smith... I shouldn't say the first Smith & Wesson revolver we've had in, because we've had in several of them, but of this exact model, this is the first one. But out of all of them as a whole, they always seem to be quality. You don't really see fit and finish issues. It does have a little ding right there on the grip, but it does also come with another grip. You could probably take a razor blade and just cut off that little mold mark, but that is something. Now the Charter Arms, this particular one doesn't have any blems on it, but we have them come through constantly with blems. You'll see machining marks all over them, bad finish, just a lot of different stuff there. So that $100 difference will buy you a nicer trigger, a lighter firearm, and a higher probability of getting quality. Plus you get a nicer trigger lock, and you can switch out the grip. So say you buy this for yourself, and then you're like, I don't really like it. Throw the pink grip on there and give it to your girl. But would I spend the extra $100 getting the Smith? Me personally, the biggest turnoff of the Smith is this lockdown key. If they got rid of this completely, I'd have no complaints about this at all. I love how the firearm's set up. I love the texturing on everything. Even the texturing on the hammer is so much more aggressive than the Charter Arms. I don't really see you slipping off the Charter Arms hammer, but it is more likely than the Smith. So yes, I would spend that $100 and get the Smith & Wesson. 1, because of the trigger. 2, because of consistent quality. 3, because it's lighter. The biggest advantage I see with the Charter Arms is there's no lockdown key. Oh yeah, and the cylinder release is better on the Smith. So hopefully Smith & Wesson, please start removing these. But thank you for watching. Leave in the comments below which one you would pick and why. If you'd like to help support the channel, click on my Patreon link. Don't forget to subscribe.